All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Armchair Armdrager podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ben Hersick, and this is episode number 40. This week, I'm going to take a look at something I've kind of had on the back burner for a little while and wanted to talk about a little bit at least, and that is what it means to be a world champion in pro wrestling in 2020. There's a lot going on in the wrestling world, and depending on where a certain wrestler is, it changes kind of how you can look at a world championship. But before we get to that, as always, with every beginning of these episodes, you can follow myself on Twitter at Churro Soldier. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat, which is a website that covers professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA, on Twitter at Things Combat. You can follow, I write stuff for All Things Combat. I should always specify that. Last week, we had an article go up that I wrote called Rated R for Return, where I took a look and gave my thoughts and reactions and things. I said words about Edge returning to WWE. Still can't get over the fact that he finally came home. And also, I am the sports editor over at The Cauldron at Cleveland State, and you can follow us on Twitter at CSU Cauldron. I'll have my two... Did I do two last week? No, I did one. I only had one article about the swim team. A link to that will be in the description below. And let's get into this. So, right now we're in between a few big shows. Elimination Chamber's coming up. We have the stupid Saudi Arabia thing. I don't care about it. We also have TakeOver Portland. I might have already said that one. I don't remember. We got a few shows coming up, but this weekend, there's no real big shows. AEW has nothing. I guess New Beginnings, but it kind of feels a little predictable. There's a couple of matches where you're like, specifically Moxley and Suzuki. You kind of tread the waters a little bit on that one. Like, this could go either way. Almost an Omega. Okada versus Taichi feels pretty simply like it's going to be Okada winning over Taichi. Naito versus Kenta, I don't think they would take the titles off of Naito right away. But that's that. So let's look at what it means to be a world champion in 2020 in pro wrestling. So, what exactly does it mean to be a world champion? And if you look in every single promotion, it means almost something different. And you look at Let's start with Monday Night Raw, because that's the first show every week, technically, if you don't have a pay-per-view on the weekends. With being world champion on Raw, there's kind of a bad stigma about it, and the Universal Championship hasn't gotten off to the best start, I'll admit that much. Let's see. Our first champion was Finn Balor. He had to give it up after one day due to injury. Not his fault. Next was Kevin Owens, who had a pretty decent run as champion. And then Goldberg. And then Brock Lesnar. And then Roman Reigns, who had to vacate the title due to his leukemia diagnosis. And then Lesnar again. And then Seth Rollins. And then back to Lesnar. And then back to Rollins. And Bray Wyatt. So we're not even starting with Raw. We're starting with SmackDown. So they're trying to fix the Universal Championship. Which, it's going to take a little bit. I've enjoyed what Bray Wyatt's been doing with the likes of Daniel Bryan and The Miz. And I do enjoy the theme that he changes people. Because nobody who's wrestled The Fiend has been the same since. Finn Balor was the first one who went on to become more like Prince Devitt. Seth Rollins became more and more unhinged to the point where he's no longer seen as the leader of Monday Night Raw, rather the antithesis and antagonist of the show. Then there's... Who else was there? Was there anyone before Bryan? No, there wasn't. So then you had Bryan. And now Bryan's back to being American Dragon-esque Bryan Danielson. And then The Miz went from being a solo act to back to being tag team partners with John Morrison, something we haven't seen since, God, when did they split up? 2010? Don't quote me on that. So now we're at this point where they're working on rebuilding this Universal Championship. There's been a few hit and misses, yes, but we're getting to a point where it might actually mean something to be Universal Champion. Why it's on almost every show in some way, shape, or form. You have, is more than likely, next challenger, Roman Reigns, who would make sense as the next champion. Would I like it? Not so much, but that's me personally. Plus, I think you look at it, with Roman as champion, it would take a little bit away because you'd have to build somebody up to beat him. But also, let's look at this. The Universal title is in a weird state. It's usually universally panned, and it's not because of the wrestler's fault. There's been guys who could have been a Universal Champion that just didn't get the job done against the likes of Lesnar and Goldberg. Kevin Owens comes to mind. Seth Rollins. And also, that title is not the best thing going right now. While, yes, the feud between Wyatt and Bryan has been good, it kind of lost a little steam towards the end. I heard it was a good strap match. I haven't gone back to rewatch it from the first time I saw it. But this is not the worst title to ever have, but it is not the one that people are clamoring for right now. It's going to be interesting to see, because this is still a relatively young title. I think we're only on year 4? I think it's 4. I'm thinking. Balor won it in 20... Yeah, was that SummerSlam 2015 or 2016? It's about 4 or 5 years old. There's still time to fix the title and make it mean something in the wrestling world. Let's talk about a title that does mean a lot in the wrestling world. The WWE Championship. This championship, it's also in a bit of a weird state. Kofi Mania was a fantastic thing, yes, and I love that. But then Brock happened. And Kofi Mania essentially just was written off as like, oh, it's done, no one cares anymore. That's not true, but that's kind of what happened. So let's look at it like, this is the title where the best of the best get a shot, but you're not guaranteed a hit. Brock hasn't defended this title since winning it, I believe. Because he wasn't at TLC, and he was in the Royal Rumble match. He's not going to defend at the Elimination Chamber. He's defending at Saudi Arabia against Ricochet. That's the one match I would want to watch from this show. As of right now, that is the only reason I would watch this show. Let Ricochet prove what he can do. Let's see Ricochet go against the big, bad monster and show the world what he can do. Give him 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Give Ricochet 10 minutes with Brock. But let's look at it from this perspective. Brock works a certain type of guy well. And that's the smaller guys. And you look at it, Ricochet is definitely one of the smaller guys. He's had great matches with, let's see if I can name a few of them. AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins on a couple occasions. His matches with Roman haven't been bad. They haven't been 5-star classics, but they haven't been negative 5 stars. They've been consistently good. Who else has he faced? Rey Mysterio, he had a good match with Rey at Survivor Series. And there was another one that I always forget. But Ricochet fits into that mold really well, and I'm curious to see, I know Ricochet's not going to win the title from him. I'm curious to see how this helps the feud with McIntyre, and if he can get a good match with McIntyre. Because McIntyre's a lot like that Roman. He's a lot like the Roman build. He's not built like Seth Rollins. He's not built like Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles. He's bigger. He's stronger than those guys are, I believe. So that would be interesting to see. And then, sticking in WWE, let's go to NXT, where Adam Cole has been the champion. This championship has been through a lot of different phases. When you can say your worst NXT champion was probably Bo Dallas, that's pretty good for the title. Do you say it was Bo Dallas, or do you say No, it's Bo. It's definitely Bo. And like, if you just look at the WWE landscape right now, being one of the world champions on any show is really, really different meanings. On SmackDown, it means that you're going against the big bad who everybody loves, and it means that you're not going to get a workhorse type match. You're not going to see the typical wrestling style that you always see with world champions. You're going to see a bit slow, or with a lot of, not with champions, with a lot of, I guess, independent guys, for lack of a better term, where it's not like, this is wrestling. You're going to see a lot more slow-paced matches. You're going to see a lot more grueling and hard-hitting affairs. On Raw, you're either going to see really short affairs or you're going to see Brock's gas tank in action. That could change come WrestleMania. We'll see. And then you look at NXT, that's the workhorse belt. That's the work rate belt. Do I expect Adam Cole to be a main player on Raw or SmackDown at some point? Yes. Will that be after he drops the NXT title? I can't really say. But just being world champion in WWE still means that you're on top of the world. You're one of the best 3 wrestlers that the company has at that point. And also, if you look at it, these guys have all taken really different paths to get here. To be a world champion in WWE means that you've put in your dues, you've paid your time, you've done everything right, and now you're here. And that's what happened. Adam Cole, Brock Lesnar, yes, even Brock has done this, and Bray Wyatt paid their dues, did their tolls, and now they're here. So let's see where that goes. But also, let's look at, I was going to go to New Japan next, but let's go to Impact Wrestling. Now, I said this at first when the feud between Blanchard and Callahan was going on, that if Tessa is to win the World Championship, it could change pro wrestling. Now, with all the stories and news and information we know concerning Tessa Blanchard and certain situations, does that change the viewpoint of this title? No. What it means to be world champion in Impact means that you pretty much got yourself over. Fans cared about you enough that they put their biggest title on you. Look at Callahan, the man before him. Look at Brian Cage. Even back to James Storm and Bobby Roode. James Storm and Bobby Roode were tag team specialists in beer money. And then 3 or 4 years after breaking up, both are multi-time Impact World Champions. Storm might be a one-time. I'm not 100% sure on that one. It means that you got yourself over, that you made people care about you. It's not saying, oh, you're one of the best. It's saying you made people care. Here's this belt. Show them why they should care even more. And that's a very interesting standpoint to look at. Impact's been through so many changes over the past few years. It's nice to see that they finally have like a system in place where things are working. And I'm very happy to see that. Yes. And so let's look at Blanchard's impact as world champion. What does Tessa Blanchard as world champion mean for the world of pro wrestling? Just for a minute, let's take away everything we've heard from outside sources, from other wrestlers. Now, I'm not saying this is untrue information, but I'm saying for just a little bit, let's put that to the side. Tessa Blanchard being world champion means and shows to fans of pro wrestling who want to get into wrestling, especially women, if she can be world champion, so can I. It doesn't matter that she's a woman. It doesn't matter that she's going against these bigger and stronger, supposedly, men. It shows that she is able to hold her own against the top level of competition, and she can go with the biggest names. She is one of the few people that can say that. And do I agree with everything she's done outside of the ring? No, absolutely not. If the rumors of what she did is true, then I don't know if she's ever going to work anywhere else other than Impact again. I don't think AEW WWE are going to want those problems. I don't know if Stardom would be interested. If she doesn't re-sign with Impact, I don't know where she's going to be successful. But her just even being a world champion shows the whole world that just because you're not a guy doesn't mean you can't be a world champion. Which is something you don't see a lot in pro wrestling, and I'm very excited to see that and very happy to see that. Could it have been somebody else? Yeah, I wouldn't have minded it being Gail Kim back in her day. Chyna back in the 90s. Hell, even Charlotte Flair. I wouldn't mind if she was the one to take the title off of Brock. So that's two of the major American promotions. We'll get to AEW in just a little bit. Let's look at New Japan. New Japan. Where it took them 8, 9, 10, I lost count, freaking years to finally put the belt on Naito. This one's a bit of a weird one to talk about because in the past, how far back? 4 or 5 years? Let's think here. Okada's been a multi-time champion. Tanahashi's had a few reigns. Jay White had a reign for about a month. Kenny Omega's been champion. Naito, I think there's only been like 5 champions in the past 4 or 5 years, off the top of my head. So let's look at things on a broader scale. So if you go to WWE and you're considered one of the 3 best wrestlers in the world when you're world champion, that means that they think you're the best. In New Japan, it's more about a storytelling aspect, whether it's in the ring or through a promo that gets translated for us American folks. But what I think it means to be world champion in New Japan. New Japan is kind of the tough one to always get a read on. To be world champion in New Japan, I have to burp, hold on. There we go. So, to be world champion in New Japan, it means that you are the best of the best in the company. They want you to represent the company. And they think that you're the best worker in the world. Not that you're the best wrestler, that you're the best person to go in the ring night in and night out and represent the company. That's a very, very, very important detail. Because of the fact that there's been so few champions in the past, in the recent history, it shows that they think a certain level is needed to be champion there. And not many people have that. So just to even have your name in the record books as IWGP Heavyweight Champion, that means a lot to a lot of people. So the fact that you can say with New Japan, there's so few guys that they see fit to represent the company, that means something to everybody. And that they want to be able to get to that level, and they're willing to work to get to that level. Now, are there a couple guys who could be there at some point? Yes, Zack Sabre Jr., Will Ospreay, maybe Sho and Yo, Shingo Takagi. I hesitate to say El Phantasmo because I don't know if right now it's a good idea to have a foreigner as world champion. Simply because of the fact that, well, it would get... Phantasmo's a long ways away from even being world champion, don't get me wrong. But that's if he stays. I don't know what Phantasmo's plans are outside of New Japan. I don't know much about Phantasmo, to be completely honest. I know he's good in the ring. I don't know much else. But you look at the likes of like those really high up junior heavyweights who could say in a few years, you know what, why not us? Phantasmo's in that group. So to look at it from that standpoint, if they want to prove that they're the best worker in the world and they want to prove that they're the best wrestler in the world and they want to go win the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, then maybe we're looking at a more of a you're the best guy we have thing instead of we want you to actually represent the company on a day-to-day basis, which is what Tetsuya Naito is right now. From New Japan, let's go back to the US and let's talk AEW. Now, if you know me, you know I'm not the biggest fan. I've tried multiple times to get into AEW, and I just can't. I still read the results, and I still am interested in seeing what happens, but I just can't get into it. I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried, and it's just not for me. But being world champion in AEW, they're about 3 or 4 months old at this point. So what exactly does it mean to be world champion in that promotion? Well, right now, from championship history, it means you have to have worked in WWE. But more important, let's look at this from this standpoint. To be world champion in AEW, it means that you have to have background. It means that you have to have experience, and it means that you have to have great character work. Chris Jericho's best years in the ring are clearly behind him. And that's not meant to be a diss. He's still very good. Oh, he's a lot better than I ever could be. But the fact is, he's not going to be doing the typical now 7 topic on helos, 8 suicide dives outside the ring, 40,000 flips. He's not going to be doing that. But his character work ever since joining AEW has maybe been some of his best work. And this includes social hypocrite. I call everybody a hypocrite Jericho. This includes best in the world Jericho against CM Punk. This includes Jericho from his first run. Painmaker slash, I don't exactly know what to call his character. Leader of Inner Circle, I guess is the best way to put it. This character right now might be some of his best work. So in AEW right now, if your character work is amazing, and you can still go in the ring, you can have the best character and still not be able to wrestle a day in your life. But you won't be AEW champion. You can be able to wrestle a day in your life and be the best wrestler in the world, but if your character work is lacking, you're not going to be AEW champion. The character of Chris Jericho is so good right now that the fact that he's world champion at damn near 50, if he's not already hit 50, the fact that he's world champion says a lot about his character work and his drive to continue to be one of the best. So that's AEW. Now let's talk about independent wrestling. There's so many promotions. I could talk about some for hours on end. But let's talk about certain ones. Progress has Cara Noir as their world champion. I believe I pronounced that correctly. I have not been keeping up with my Progress viewing. It was Eddie Dennis beforehand, but he forfeited it due to some reason or another. There's Evolve's world champion who is Anthony Bennett, I believe is his name. He was the guy who started the show, the Evolve special on the network. And he was the guy who attacked Austin Theory afterwards, after the main event. Well, the match before the main event, because Cole was there. There's a whole bunch of other amazing world champions in other promotions. But what does it mean to them to be world champion? It could mean they see them as the best of the best. That company, specifically, whichever company they happen to be in, sees them as the best of the best. But also, they could see them as the best of the rest. We can't get, I'm trying to think of a guy. We can't get a Cedric Alexander or EC3, so you'll do, is kind of what I mean when I say best of the rest. But what they should see themselves as is this company that I'm working with, whether it's Progress, Evolve, WXW, Indie Girls, Shimmer, anywhere you work, you should view it as this company cares enough about me as a professional wrestler to actually put their biggest title on me. That should speak volumes to them. This should show them that they are good enough. And that if they continue to work towards their point, towards their goal of being some of the best pro wrestlers in the world, then sky's the limit. This is just your starting point. You can go as far as possible with your career. It's very important to actually take that mindset and run with it. If you take that mindset and become complacent, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to be making it in the world of pro wrestling. There's a reason Meltzer does his PWI 500. He looks for the 500 best wrestlers in the world. Not necessarily is he always right? No. For example, I don't think Seth Rollins should have been number one this year. But he looks for the 500 best. There's over 500 wrestlers in the world for the men. And to not be on that list year in and year out for somebody could drive them to say, you know what, Meltzer's wrong. I am one of the 500 best. Now, yes, does Meltzer have his... Is Meltzer the most credible source? No. But he's the most well-known. People talk about him. That's what's important. If you get the Meltzer nod of approval, people are going to be talking about you in the pro wrestling world. And that's whether it's going to be you're good, you're bad, whatever it is. And they should take this and look at this as a proving ground. Just because you're not on the 500 doesn't mean you're bad, but your mindset might not be where you want it to be, or where it should be. Have the mindset of pushing yourself to be that part. Be the best wrestler that you can be, and championships are going to find you, whether it's a world championship, a mid-card title, whatever it is. In general, as a pro wrestler in 2020, the mindset that you should have in being a champion. What did I say this was going to be called? So in pro wrestling in 2020, what it means to be a world champion is you're one of the best, but keep working. It doesn't matter if you're one of the top wrestlers in the world. It doesn't matter if you're one of the best characters in the world, one of the best representatives for a company in the world, or even nowadays of women. Could women have been world champion back in the day? Absolutely. Would fans have been more welcoming of it back then? Probably not. But right now is the right time for it. This topic is so wide open and so deep and so vast that you could ask a number of people, what does it mean to be world champion in 2020? And they'll all, if you ask 10 people that question, 10 people will have different answers. No person is going to have the same answer. But you look at it, and the fact that there are so few world champions. Like, every promotion has one, yes. But the fact that only one person can be world champion in every promotion means that you have to work your ass off. It doesn't matter if it's your first day, if it's your last match ever. Work your ass off, and eventually people will start to notice you. And they'll put those titles on you in trust that you will continue to do it. Don't get lax. Don't get lazy. Even though Brock Lesnar only works a handful of dates a year, he still is out there putting on great matches. So continue to work to strive to be the best is pretty much what it means to be a world champion in 2020. You strove to be the best. And just because now you're at the mountaintop, you're not going to stop striving. I feel like that got a little bit preachy there, especially towards the end, but that's my take on what it means to be a world champion in 2020. Like I said, I want to start keeping these things a little shorter due to time constraints with schoolwork going on and work and me trying to have a normal social life. Not very easy, but I'm trying at least. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, with these episodes, if you like what you heard, leave a like. If you really like what you heard, hit subscribe. New episodes are every Saturday for the next few weeks, I believe. At least the next 13 weeks. Once the semester's over, we'll see how exactly I want to go about this. But then again, I'm good at English, I swear. Not really, but still. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to follow myself on Twitter, it is at Churro Soldier. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat on Twitter at Things Combat. I write for them over there. We cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA. I have an article up right now called Rated R for Return. After 9 years, how WWE got its edge back. Very excited, very happy with that title. I love that I wrote it. I loved how it turned out. There's that. And you can also follow The Cauldron at Cleveland State on Twitter at CSU Cauldron. I write sports stuff over there. I edit sports stuff over there. There's going to be a link to my article about the swim team in 20... There's going to be a link in the description to an article I wrote about the swim team for our most recent issue. That's... Oh, the All Things Combat merch store. I keep forgetting to plug this one at the end. You guys can buy All Things Combat merch. You can buy shirts, hats, hoodies, mouse pads, phone cases, lunch boxes, and a large selection of stuff is available for you guys. Link to that in the description below. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll be back next week. I believe I should have TakeOver Portland predictions. Very excited for that show. I really hope none of the matches go to the pre-show because all of those matches deserve attention. Like I said, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you guys next week.